All right, beautiful people. Today we're talking about dividing fractions. Before we get into dividing fractions, we're going to need to think about some vocab terms that'll help us do it. So, how is dividing fractions similar and how is it different to multiplying fractions? So, the first thing we need to know is what it means to invert something. Invert. Okay. So, you might have heard this word before in different contexts. To invert something means to turn it over or to flip it. Okay. An example that I have is that if you have a glass that's face up, if you invert it, you turn it over so that it's face down, okay? So why don't I just start with an arrow example. If you have an arrow, you invert it, and all of a sudden it is face down, okay? The arrow would remain the same, it's just you flip the arrow so that it's upside down. So in math, there are times when we need to invert things. So particularly when we're doing division of fractions, we need to know about how to invert something and what's that called. So when you invert fractions, you find a fraction's reciprocal. So I'm going to write this word again, reciprocal. Okay, and a reciprocal is the inverted version of a number. Okay, and here are some examples. The inverted version of a number. So how about the example of 1/2? The reciprocal would happen when I inverted 1/2. So if I flip it upside down, if I flip 1/2 upside down, then the 2 becomes the top number or the numerator, and the 1 becomes the denominator. So the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2/1 because I've inverted it or I've flipped it. Okay, so let's think about like maybe another example really quick. How about 3/5? Reciprocal. If I take 3/5 and I flip it upside down, or I reverse it, I have 5/3. Okay, and the cool thing about reciprocals is that if you multiply a number with its reciprocal, that number becomes 1. So I'm going to write this cool piece of data in the side. If you multiply a number and its reciprocal, you get 1. Okay, this is a really important and cool piece of information. So for example, if I take 1/2 and I multiply it by 2/1, 1 times 2 is 2, and 2 times 1 is 2, which is 2/2, which is the same as 1. Because remember, 1 is any time that I have the same numerator as I have a denominator. Okay, so now we know what it means to invert, what a reciprocal is, and the really cool fact that when you have a reciprocal, you get the number 1. So let's talk about writing reciprocals. Okay, so I'm going to write the reciprocals for 9/5 and for 3. So 9/5, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to write reciprocal. So then I'm going to remember that reciprocal means to invert or to flip. So the 5 becomes the numerator and the 9 becomes the denominator. I can check that it's a reciprocal by doing the special work that we wrote on the left-hand side. So I can do 9/5 times 5/9, and that becomes 45/45, which is the same as 1 whole, which is how I know I got the right reciprocal. Okay. Now this next one is a little trickier because 3 is a whole number. It's not written as a fraction. So I'm going to remind myself something over here that whole numbers are fractions too. Okay. The thing about a whole number is that you can put it over the number 1. So 3/1 means 3 whole numbers. If I write the reciprocal, then I've got 1/3. And again, I can check it just like I did on the last one. 3/1 times 1/3 equals 3/3, which equals 1. Okay. Now that we've talked about reciprocals, we're going to talk about dividing fractions and what this means for dividing fractions.